From the chilly emptiness of space, Iridia Prime hung like a dry, rocky ball, its rough beauty hiding a tough environment. As the view got closer, the planet's desolate features sharpened, showing a landscape marked by lots of digging and drilling. Under the blazing sun, Iridia Prime's surface stretched out, with swirling dust storms adding to the lonely scene. Machines hummed steadily, showing that humans had made their mark on this barren place. In the middle of all this activity was the mine. Mara Kellis stood at the edge of a cliff, looking out over the land she was in charge of. She'd been here long enough to see that Iridia's beauty could be harsh to those who tried to take its treasures. Her team worked like a well-oiled machine, each person doing their job with high concentration. Dust swirled around them, lit up by sunlight, trying to get through the planet's thick atmosphere. As Mara checked her screens, numbers and charts scrolled by, showing her all the info she needed. Then, she saw something weird, an odd blip on her screen that didn't make sense. "Mitchell," Mara called out to one of her teammates without looking away from the screen. "Compare it to now. Take a look at Rig 7, too." Mitchell stopped what he was doing and came over to Mara's station. He tapped away at the keyboard, bringing up the data for comparison. Mara watched as lines on the screen showed changes from before to now. "Looks like we've got a problem," Mitchell said, almost whispering, sounding more curious than worried. Mara nodded. This wasn't just a glitch in the system. It was something happening underground that needed figuring out. In the depths of the mine, where darkness embraced ancient secrets, Dr. Miriam Janutto led her team with a blend of scholarly curiosity and cautious precision. The tunnel stretched out like the throat of some colossal creature. "Mind your footing," Janutto cautioned, her voice reverberating off the enclosing walls. "These tunnels aren't as well mapped as the main shafts." Her team, a diverse mix of scientists and engineers chosen for their expertise and bravery, followed closely behind. Each carried a load of equipment, scanners, data pads, and tools, testaments to their readiness for whatever lay ahead. Their footsteps echoed against the rock, blending with the distant hum of mining operations above. Here, in the untouched depths beyond the corpse's relentless pursuit of ore, history whispered through every mineral vein and fissure. Her fingers longed to trace the lines etched by time across the planet's surface, but she restrained herself. Discipline was paramount. There was important work to be done. Ahead, the tunnel forked into a maze of possibilities. Janutto paused at the junction, consulting her datapad. She matched her location with the seismic readings that had led them to this uncharted area. "This way," she declared after a moment, pointing towards the left passage with her light. Its beam cut through the darkness, revealing rough edges where recent shifts had altered the tunnel's path. Her team followed without hesitation, placing their trust in Janutto's expertise and experience. With each turn, they ventured further from the world above, closer to the hidden wonders buried within Iridia Prime's depths. Here, echoes faded into silence, swallowed by stone. The air grew cooler, offering relief from the stifling heat of the surface. Janutto adjusted her headlamp, its beam illuminating mineral deposits clinging to the walls like frozen stars. "Watch for weak spots," she reminded her team. "We're not alone down here. Time has left its mark on these passages." As they pressed forward, scanners in hand, each member understood they were not only explorers, but guardians treading upon a world both alien and ancient. Under the constant rumble of drilling and excavation, Dr. Miriam Janutto's team stumbled upon a discovery that left them momentarily stunned. The ground beneath their feet transitioned into a stretch of polished stone, its surface deliberate and smooth, marking the sealed entrance to an ancient alien city. Towering above them, the doorway bore intricate symbols pulsating with an unearthly energy. The find electrified the team, a blend of excitement and trepidation coursing through their veins. They had unearthed something monumental, a gateway to knowledge long buried beneath Iridia Prime's rough exterior. Approaching the towering door with reverence, Janutto hovered her hand over its cool surface. Tracing the elaborate engravings, her mind raced to decipher their meaning. The symbols defied any known language or script, a testament to their alien origin. "Let's document these patterns," Januto instructed, her voice steady despite the surge of excitement. The team sprang into action, cameras and scanners capturing every inch of the door. Januto herself conducted a thorough scan for any energy signatures hinting at a mechanism or power source. Hours passed as they meticulously collected data and attempted to interface with the door's ancient technology. Yet despite their efforts, running algorithms, consulting databases, and applying scientific principles, the entrance remained firmly sealed. Frustration began to weigh on Januto's composed demeanor as she reviewed the scans once more. "We've tried everything," one team member sighed, echoing the wariness that settled over them. Januto straightened. "We're overlooking something," she murmured, her thoughts racing. "There's a clue here. We just need to uncover it." With renewed determination, she delved back into the enigmatic symbols before her, each line and curve scrutinized in her relentless pursuit of the key that would unlock the secrets of the ancient city, a key that remained elusive for now. In the gleaming halls of the GC Mining Corp headquarters, perched high above the city's bustle, executives gathered in a conference room with a commanding view of the skyline, a testament to their authority. The walls of the room, adorned with screens and charts, hummed with an air of anticipation. Dr. Miriam Januto, a beacon of intellect and determination, held the room's attention as she stood confidently at the head of the polished table. The report in her hands was the result of weeks of tireless work and meticulous analysis. Every detail of the door and its mysterious engravings had been scrutinized. "We've pushed our current technology to its limits," Januto conceded, her voice resonating softly against the room's glass walls. Her tone remained firm, her resolve unwavering. "The energy signature from the door is unlike anything we've encountered before, and as for the symbols, they remain a puzzle. They could be a language, a map, or even a warning." Sinclair nodded thoughtfully, his fingers interlaced as he absorbed her words. "Thank you, Dr. Januto. We'll take it from here." With a nod, Januto exited the room, her footsteps muffled by the plush carpeting. Sinclair turned to his team, Loudon, Geraldine, and Boris, each representing different aspects of the corporation's conscience. "The potential here is immense," Loudon began eagerly. "Imagine what we could achieve with this technology. It could transform our operations." Geraldine crossed her arms, her expression troubled. "But what if it's risky? We know so little about it. This could put everything we've worked for at risk." Boris leaned forward, his voice measured. "We must consider the ethical implications. This city belonged to someone, or something, before us. Do we have the right to claim it?" Loudon waved off Boris's concerns. "Rights are determined by power, and we have it." Geraldine shot Loudon a sharp glance. "Power doesn't absolve us of responsibility. If we're not careful, we miss an opportunity," Loudon interjected. Boris raised his hand, seeking to redirect the conversation. "There's an opportunity here, too, to set a standard for ethical exploration." Sinclair observed his team, Loudon's ambition, Geraldine's caution, Boris's integrity, all factors to be balanced. He listened attentively as they debated, carefully considering each argument. The city beneath Iridia Prime wasn't just a resource, it was a mystery holding both promise and peril. And so the discussion continued, words exchanged like pieces on a chessboard as Sinclair weighed every move made by his executives. The atmosphere in the boardroom grew heavy with unspoken agreement. Each executive sat immersed in their own calculations, the silence serving as a shared cloak of contemplation. The CEO's words lingered in the air, reverberating off the glass and steel that enveloped them high above the world. Luthar was the first to break the silence, his voice carrying a sense of finality. "Secrecy is crucial. We control the narrative until we fully grasp what we're dealing with." Nods of assent rippled around the table, deliberate and measured. Loudon leaned back, a faint smile playing on his lips. "Strategic release of information could skyrocket our stock prices when the timing is right." Geraldine tapped her finger thoughtfully on the table, her gaze focused. "And if we can harness this technology, the influence it could afford us," Luthar interjected, his eyes gleaming with visions of industry domination. Boris cleared his throat, injecting a note of caution into the discussion. We must also consider how we protect this knowledge. It's not just about keeping it from our competitors, but from those who may misuse it. Which is precisely why secrecy is not just advantageous, but imperative, Ludin added, sealing the consensus with his concurrence. The CEO observed their unity, recognizing the rare alignment of diverse minds and motives. Rising from his seat, his gesture brought an immediate hush to any lingering murmurs. We proceed with the understanding that what lies within that ancient city could propel our corporation to unprecedented heights, he declared, his gaze sweeping across each face to ensure his words left an indelible impression. But let us not be blinded by ambition alone. We will take every measure to safeguard this discovery. The executives rose in unison, their movements synchronized by tacit agreement, a tableau of authority and discretion that would shape the days ahead. We commence planning at once, the CEO announced, setting into motion a series of actions that would unfold in secrecy until the time was ripe to unveil to the world the secrets hidden beneath Iridia Prime. As the executives departed, their footsteps softened by the plush carpet, Luthar lingered, casting a final glance over his shoulder, an unspoken pledge of secrecy hanging in the air. Alone now, the CEO stood still, a sentinel in a chamber steeped in the whispers of countless confidences. Slowly, he withdrew a sleek communicator from his pocket. With a deft press of his thumb, it sprang to life. "Get me says," he murmured into the device, his voice a mere whisper, yet commanding with authority. A moment elapsed, a fleeting exchange of signals among satellites, before a crisp response echoed through the line. "Says here." The reply was swift and alert. "We have a development on Iridia Prime. A discovery," the CEO disclosed, his words chosen with care. "It's imperative this remains internal." "Understood." There was no hesitation in Sez's assurance, only the composed confidence of seasoned professionalism. "What are your directives?" "Seal off any leaks. I need your team on this. Absolute discretion. No access permitted without your authorization." A faint crackle signaled Sez's compliance before the line fell silent with a soft click. Slipping the communicator back into his pocket, the CEO approached the expansive window overlooking the sprawling metropolis below. The city lights glimmered like distant constellations, each one a guide in the vast expanse, a reflection of the enigmatic depths of Iridia Prime, where their destiny lay concealed in shadow and silence. In a whirlwind of dust, a thunderous roar erupted from the depths of the mine. Alexis Rivera, attuned to the Earth's vibrations, felt the tremor before it reached her ears. She sprang upright from her task, the clang of her tools against the rocky ground drowned out by the chaos. A deafening blast reverberated through the tunnels, sending shockwaves bouncing off the walls. Alexis pressed herself against the jagged wall as a surge of rock and debris surged past. A blinding haze enveloped her, but her focus remained sharp amid the turmoil. In the aftermath, silence settled, a haunting pause before cries for help pierced the dusty air. Alexis wasted no time, her lungs straining with each breath of dusty air. Through collapsed beams and twisted metal, she navigated, her hands moving swiftly to free those trapped under the rubble. "Over here!" Her voice sliced through the darkness as she reached a group of miners pinned beneath fallen supports. With desperate strength, she began to clear the debris. One by one, she pulled her comrades from the dangerous tangle. Bloodied faces emerged into the dim light, the scent of explosives mingling with the raw earth as Alexis searched for survivors. Amid groans and gasps, Alexis assessed injuries, broken bones, deep wounds, and worse. She fashioned makeshift bandages from torn clothing and offered words of encouragement, feeble against the weight of their situation. With no time for grief, Alexis led the injured toward safety. Each step was agony for some, a testament to survival for others. Behind them, the mine lay in ruins, once bustling with activity, now silent and still. As they emerged into the harsh light of Iridia Prime's suns, rescue teams rushed forward. Stretchers unfolded, and medics swarmed, tending to wounds as Alexis recounted who remained unaccounted for. The injured were loaded into transports bound for the city hospital, an institution familiar with mining accidents but unprepared for this scale of disaster. Alexis watched as dust-covered faces disappeared behind ambulance doors. The truth of the explosion lay buried in rubble and darkness, but its impact reverberated through every life it touched. None more so than Alexis Rivera's. Says, the expert commando unit leader arrived at the scene of the mine disaster with his team. The air was thick with dust and the scent of explosives, and the ground trembled beneath their feet. The mine, once a bustling hub of activity, was now a silent, desolate wasteland. With precision and efficiency, Says ordered his team to seal off the area. They moved quickly, securing the perimeter and blocking off all entrances. The miners, already evacuated, were now gone from the area, leaving behind only the remnants of their work and the echoes of their screams. As the team worked, Says couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. The explosion had been too powerful, too destructive. It was as if the mine itself had fought back against the intrusion of human hands. But there was no time to dwell on such thoughts. Says had a job to do, and he was determined to complete it. He watched as his team finished sealing the mine, their faces grim as they surveyed the devastation around them. Once the area was secure, Says signaled for his team to regroup. They gathered around him, their gear heavy and their spirits weighed down by the tragedy they had witnessed. "We've done our job," Says said, his voice low and gravelly. "Now we wait for further orders." The team nodded, understanding the gravity of their situation. They knew that their work was far from over. As they stood there, the silence of the mine pressing in around them, Says couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. There was something lurking beneath the surface of this place, something that had yet to reveal itself. But for now, they had sealed everything shut, and the miners were safe. That was all that mattered. As the team dispersed, Says remained behind, his eyes scanning the darkness of the mine. He could feel the weight of history pressing down on him, the secrets of the earth whispering in his ear. As he walked away from the sealed mine, Says couldn't shake the feeling that they had only scratched the surface of what lay beneath. But for now, they had done what they could, and they would be ready when the time came to delve deeper into the earth's secrets. The team left the mine behind, their hearts heavy with the weight of what they had seen. But they knew that they had done their job and that they had saved lives in the process. In the sterile hospital environment, Dr. Miriam Januto's expression tightened as she surveyed the room. Her team, typically vibrant with curiosity and energy, now sat enveloped in a heavy silence, their eyes fixed on the clinical floor. The rhythmic beeping of medical equipment and the distant shuffle of hurried footsteps provided a melancholic backdrop to their shared grief. "We were on the verge of uncovering history," Januto finally spoke, her voice barely audible above a whisper. "And now," a younger member of the team, his arm in a sling, raised his head. "It all feels futile," he murmured, a mixture of pain and despair evident in his tone. Opposite him, a woman, still dust-streaked from the day's events, leaned forward. "We can't let this setback define us," she implored, searching Januto's eyes for a glimmer of their usual determination. Januto sighed deeply, acknowledging the weight of their loss. She reached out, clasping the woman's hand in hers. "The loss is immense," she admitted, "but we cannot allow fear or sorrow to derail our pursuit of knowledge." The team exchanged somber glances, each grappling with their own emotions in the aftermath of the explosion. It had not only shattered the ground, but also shaken their purpose to the core. Standing up, Januto moved to the window, gazing out at the distant horizon where Iridia Prime's suns began their descent, casting long shadows across the room. "Those miners," she continued, turning back to face her team, "they were part of this journey too, the quest to uncover the past. We will honor their memory. Their sacrifice will not be forgotten." Her team looked to her, seeing not just their leader, but a fellow traveler on this path of discovery. Though the road ahead was uncertain and fraught with challenges, Januto's words sparked a flicker of hope amidst the darkness of tragedy. Their work with the ancient city was far from over. It was intertwined with their very identities. Yet there they sat together, grappling with the weight of what had transpired and the challenges that lay ahead, unified by their shared purpose and the memory of those who had fallen. Rick Thompson stood at the window of his office, observing the dusty landscape of Iridia Prime. Dust devils twirled across the barren terrain under the reddish hue of the setting sun, casting elongated shadows that mirrored the uncertainties in his mind. Transitioning from military life to the corporate realm of GC Mining Corp had presented its own challenges, a different kind of battlefield where adversaries wielded briefcases as effectively as weapons. The door swished open, and Commander Stenson entered, his expression etched with worry. "Thompson, we've got a problem," Stenson stated bluntly. "Rig 7 exploded. Casualties are rising. We need you to investigate." Rick nodded, rising from his desk. "Explosions don't occur without reason," he mused aloud, his military instincts kicking in. Stenson's gaze remained firm. "That's why we're sending you. Your track record speaks volumes." In the corporate mining world, Rick's reputation for straightforwardness was rare. His reports were concise, devoid of unnecessary embellishments. If something was amiss on Iridia Prime, he would uncover it. He headed to the transport bay, thoughts racing as fast as the swirling dust outside. While the explosion might have been an accident, Rick couldn't shake his sense of suspicion. In his experience, accidents often concealed darker truths. The transport bay buzzed with activity as crews readied for departure. Rick boarded the shuttle, bound for the site of the incident, exchanging nods with the pilot before securing himself in his seat. As the shuttle's engines roared to life and it lifted off, Rick peered down at Iridia Prime, its secrets concealed beneath layers of rock and silence. He was determined to unearth those secrets, no matter how deep he had to delve. The shuttle descended with a hydraulic hiss, stirring up a cloud of dust that settled upon the shoulders of the few bystanders who had gathered to witness its landing. Stepping out onto the gravelly soil of Iridia Prime, Rick Thompson surveyed the makeshift skyline, a collection of rugged buildings and towering rigs that loomed like guardians against the barren landscape. His first destination was the local pub, a dimly lit establishment known as the Driller's Respite. Inside, the air was heavy with the scent of synthetic alcohol and the murmur of weary voices. Miners, their faces still streaked with dirt, clustered around tables, seeking solace after grueling shifts. At the bar, Rick ordered a stiff drink. The bartender, a stout man with a mechanical arm, poured a clear liquid into a glass and slid it across. "New in town," the bartender remarked. "What brings you to this corner of the universe?" "Trouble at Rig 7, Rick replied, taking a sip. The liquid burned as it went down, but he welcomed the sensation. Conversations at nearby tables caught his attention. "Did you hear about Rig 7? One miner whispered to another. "Yeah, heard it went up in flames. Accident?" "Accident or not, it's our necks on the line every time we step foot down there." Rick listened quietly as they exchanged stories of close calls and mechanical mishaps, accounts of survival in an environment that seemed to defy human presence at every turn. But amidst the chatter, there was no mention of any ancient city buried beneath the surface. With his drink finished and the miner's gossip swirling in his mind, Rick left the Driller's Respite behind. He made his way to the local police station for an official briefing. Inside, charts, maps, and a fatigued officer awaited him, offering what little information they had on the explosion. Having absorbed all he could from the authorities, Rick stepped back into the dusty streets. The sun had vanished beyond the horizon, leaving the city bathed in artificial light. As he wandered through the quiet streets, his thoughts sifted through fragments of conversations and reports. Near one of the larger housing units, a figure approached with purpose, Alexis Rivera. Her determined stride matched the intensity in her eyes. "Mr. Thompson," she called out, bridging the gap between them. Rick pivoted to face her squarely. "Alexis Rivera," he acknowledged with a nod of respect. "I've got my own take on what happened at Rig 7, she declared, cutting through the tension with unwavering clarity. Her voice left no room for doubt. "And let me tell you, it's a far cry from the sanitized version they're feeding us." Dr. Miriam Januto moved with measured steps along the pristine corridors of the city hospital, her footfalls echoing softly against the polished floor. Amidst the murmurs of medical machinery and the subdued conversations of hospital staff, her mind churned with a persistent unease since the mine explosion. In a secluded room, two of her colleagues, survivors of the blast, lay on their beds in the process of recovery. Though their injuries were not life-threatening, the telltale signs of their ordeal were evident in the bandages and wariness that clung to them like a shadow. Dr. Januto paused at the doorway, observing them through the transparent pane. Entering the room, her presence elicited weary smiles from the recovering pair. "How are you both holding up?" she inquired, her concern palpable in her steady voice. "We've seen better days," one responded with a weak attempt at humor, his expression quickly contorting with pain. The other managed a feeble thumbs up from beneath the covers, a silent acknowledgement of their shared ordeal. Approaching their bedside, Dr. Januto offered a reassuring touch to each, her words carrying a gentle weight. "We've been fortunate this time," she murmured, her tone a mixture of relief and determination. "But we cannot disregard the dangers that lurk above ground while we delve into the mysteries below." Already, her mind raced with plans and precautions, seeking to safeguard her team from further harm. The allure of the hidden city beneath their feet was undeniable, but recent events had cast a shadow over their pursuit. Glimpsing at the vital signs monitor, she noted the steady yet elevated heart rates. "I will ensure that we tread cautiously," she affirmed, more to herself than to her resting colleagues. "Our discovery holds significance, but your well-being takes precedence." With their silent agreement, she left them to recuperate, returning to the hallway where she retrieved her tablet. Fingers dancing across the screen, she reached out to her team, offering support and reassurance in the face of uncertainty. Dr. Januto remained steadfast, a pillar of strength and guidance amidst the turmoil, unwilling to falter when her team relied on her most. Michel stumbled wearily into the confines of his humble abode, nestled on the fringes of the miner's habitation zone. The lingering effects of the exhaustive medical examination weighed heavily upon him, his limbs burdened with fatigue. Within, the flickering fluorescence cast elongated shadows that danced across the barren walls, as if echoing the labyrinthine depths of the nearby mine. A sigh escaped him, laden with the heaviness of the subterranean world he had just left behind. Collapsing into a weathered chair, its worn faux leather bearing witness to the passage of time, Michel's gaze drifted towards the dusty window. There, amidst the twilight's embrace, Iridia Prime's twin moons hung like spectral sentinels, a haunting reminder of the ancient mysteries veiled beneath the rugged terrain. In the sanctuary of his thoughts, the echoes of the mine's tumult still reverberated. He could almost taste the acrid dust, feel the tremors beneath his feet. The explosion remained etched in his memory, a thunderous roar threatening to consume them all. Recollections of his comrades, faces etched with fear yet bound by resilience, flooded his mind. Together, they had weathered the tempest, emerging battered but unbowed. A sharp rap at the door shattered his reverie, jolting him from his fatigue-induced trance. Suspicion mingled with weariness as he cautiously approached, uncertain of the unexpected visitor. "Who's there?" His voice, tinged with wariness, echoed through the silence. No response came, only the relentless pounding at the threshold. With trepidation, Michel peered through the peephole, greeted by an ominous void. A knot of apprehension tightened in his gut, a portent of impending peril. Before he could react, the door yielded to a forceful assault, splintering under the relentless onslaught. Cloaked in darkness, figures surged into the room, their intentions veiled beneath the guise of shadow, says enigmatic enforcers. Instinct propelled Michel into action, his training guiding him through the chaos of the impromptu skirmish. With swift movements, he sought refuge amidst the confines of his home, wielding whatever makeshift weapons lay within reach. Within the cramped confines, the struggle unfolded. Yet, despite his valiant efforts, Michel found himself ensnared by the coordinated onslaught, outnumbered and outmaneuvered. He succumbed to the darkness that engulfed him, a silent witness to the swift and merciless machinations of his captors. In the eerie stillness that followed, Michel lay vanquished, a solitary figure swallowed by the unforgiving embrace of Iridia Prime's nocturnal expanse. Dr. Miriam Januto was deeply engrossed in her research, her gaze fixed intently on the screen, displaying the latest findings. With each passing moment, she hoped to unearth the elusive clues that might shed light on the enigmatic civilization that once thrived beneath the surface. The stillness of her makeshift office stood in stark contrast to the usual lively discussions of her team. As she leaned back in her chair, a sudden, sharp knock at the door shattered the tranquility. Januto's heart raced with anticipation, a mix of hope and apprehension flooding her thoughts. It could signify a breakthrough, an urgent message, or perhaps something more ominous. With a calm demeanor, she welcomed the visitor. "Please, come in," she beckoned. The door swung open, revealing a junior archaeologist, his face marked by a blend of fear and urgency. He entered the room hastily, his breaths coming in short gasps. "Dr. Januto," he began, his voice strained, "Amir and Lai, they're gone." A chill ran down Januto's spine. "Gone? What do you mean?" she inquired, her tone sharp with concern. "They didn't show up for roll call this morning," he explained. "At first, we assumed they were running late, but their quarters, they were empty. No goodbye, no sign of their intentions. It's unlike them to vanish without a trace." Januto rose from her chair, her mind racing with possibilities. "Have you checked with security? Informed the local authorities?" she asked urgently. "We've done everything we can," he replied, his voice tinged with worry, "but there's no sign of them anywhere." As they spoke, another team member rushed in, breathless with news that sent shockwaves through the room. 2 bodies had been discovered in the desert surrounding Iridia Prime. Januto's heart sank as she grappled with the grim reality of their loss. Summoning her team, she addressed them with a firm yet somber tone. "Listen closely," she began. "The disappearance of Amir and Lee is a grave concern. It's clear that our research has put us all in danger." A heavy silence settled over the room, punctuated only by the sound of shallow breaths and furrowed brows. Some exchanged anxious glances, while others clenched their fists in determination. "I'm initiating emergency protocols," Januto continued, her voice steady. "We need to lay low until we understand the full extent of the threat, pack only the essentials, and be prepared to evacuate at a moment's notice." From the back of the room, the junior archaeologist timidly raised a question about her safety. "I have my suspicions about who's behind this," she admitted, "but rest assured, I'll be taking extra precautions for my own safety." With that, she turned back to her desk, her mind already racing with plans to safeguard her team and unravel the mysteries that now seemed more perilous than ever before. Dr. Miriam Januto sealed her office with a decisive click, the sound reverberating through the empty corridor. Her movements were calculated, each step deliberate. Every flicker of light above and distant echo in the hallway seemed to conspire against her, heightening her senses to the approaching danger. She sensed it, the subtle change in the atmosphere, the faint tremor beneath her feet signaling pursuit. Instincts honed by years of traversing hazardous terrain screamed a silent warning. Someone was tailing her. Januto's mind raced, swiftly recalling the compound's layout with meticulous detail. Slipping into a side passage, she moved with a silent grace, blending seamlessly into the background. The din of machinery and distant chatter masked her movements as she sought refuge. An ajar door beckoned from the shadows. Without hesitation, she slipped inside, her eyes scanning for hiding spots. Among racks of equipment, she found temporary shelter, nestled amidst seismic readers and crates, her breathing steady, her senses keen. Minutes stretched like eternity as the sound of footsteps drew nearer, purposeful and probing. The intruders moved with precision, their quietude a testament to their skill and intent. Januto listened as they approached, their murmurs barely audible. "She can't have gone far," one voice whispered to another. Outside her sanctuary, they deliberated their next move. With the discipline of a seasoned explorer, Genuto stilled every muscle, becoming one with the very walls that concealed her. A sudden commotion elsewhere in the compound diverted their attention, a stroke of luck or a calculated distraction. Genuto didn't wait to find out. Emerging from her hiding place like a phantom, she seized the opportunity to melt into Iridia Prime's bustling streets. Narrow alleys became her labyrinth, crowded marketplaces her cloak. As she navigated the throngs of oblivious citizens, Genuto wove a complex path to confound any pursuers. The distant echoes of footsteps faded into the city's symphony of life and commerce. Arriving at a nondescript dwelling known only to her closest confidants, Genuto secured the door behind her. Though her heart pounded with adrenaline, her mind remained sharp. Here, in the sanctuary of shadows and silence, Dr. Miriam Genuto prepared for the next chapter in her perilous journey. And the tranquil embrace of Iridia Prime's farming section, the Greenfield colony bloomed like a vibrant flower amidst the planet's stark landscape. Enclosed within protective domes, lush rows of crops reached eagerly towards artificial light, a lifeline in the desolation. The gentle hum of drones pollinating plants and the soft trickle of water through hydroponic systems filled the air with a soothing melody. Dr. Elizabeth Morgan stood at the heart of this verdant sanctuary, her clipboard a symbol of her meticulous care. With each step down the rows of genetically modified corn, she observed with a keen eye, her presence commanding respect from the workers who tended to the crops. "Elizabeth, come see this," called James Carter, his voice carrying across the field. Kneeling beside a tomato plant, he gestured towards its roots, where nitrogen-fixing bacteria thrived. Elizabeth approached, nodding in approval at the sight. "A promising sign," she remarked, acknowledging the potential for reducing reliance on costly chemical fertilizers. James wiped sweat from his brow, his hands stained with soil. "We've come a long way from the days of dust and rocks," he reminisced with a grin. Elizabeth shared in his laughter before growing reflective. "It's been a journey of perseverance and innovation." Their gaze swept across the flourishing colony, a testament to their shared determination. "Let's continue to push forward," Elizabeth declared. "Expanding our crop variety is the next step." James nodded in agreement, his determination mirroring hers. "We'll make it happen," he affirmed. Elizabeth and James confront the challenges of Iridia Prime's harsh environment with unwavering determination and innovative thinking. Their story inspires future generations, demonstrating humanity's capacity to overcome even the harshest of conditions through perseverance, collaboration, and a deep respect for the natural world. In the midst of Greenfield Colony's farming section, James felt the weight of Dr. Morgan's gaze as his communicator pierced the calm with an urgent buzz. His hand moved instinctively to the device, but a sense of foreboding gripped him. Dr. Morgan sensed the shift in his demeanor, her eyes mirroring his sudden concern. The message flashed on the screen, stark and unsettling. "Explosion at Rig 7. Casualties reported." James felt a chill run down his spine. Rig 7, where Alexis toiled deep within Iridia Prime's depths. Fear clenched his heart as he grappled with the implications. "James?" Dr. Morgan's voice was a steady anchor in the rising storm of panic. "My daughter! She's at Rig 7, he managed, his words heavy with dread. Dr. Morgan's hand rested reassuringly on his shoulder, a silent gesture of solidarity. "We'll find out what happened," she promised, her resolve unwavering. As James reached out to Alexis, desperation fueled his trembling fingers. He needed to reach her, to ensure her safety in the face of uncertainty. Amidst the tense wait for a response, another message arrived, this time from an old ally. Rick Thompson on Iridia Prime, investigating explosion. James felt a surge of relief. Rick Thompson, a name synonymous with resilience and determination. If anyone could uncover the truth behind the explosion and ensure Alexis's safety, it was Rick. "Rick's here," James murmured, drawing strength from the thought. He'll get to the bottom of this. With renewed determination, James turned to Dr. Morgan, his resolve clear. I have to go to her, he declared. Go, Dr. Morgan urged, her support unwavering. We'll manage here. With a nod of gratitude, James set off towards the transport bay, every step a silent vow to bring Alexis home safely. With Rick on the case, he knew he wasn't alone in his quest for answers and reassurance. In the haven of the pub, where the dust of Iridia Prime settled for a fleeting moment, Rick Thompson sought refuge. His drink offered little solace against the burning questions that plagued his mind. You've seen your fair share of trouble, remarked the bartender, his cloth working tirelessly on a worn glass. Rick's response came with a wry smile, his gaze drifting past the bartender. Trouble finds a way, he acknowledged. The bartender, recognizing Rick, leaned in as if sharing a secret. You're Rick Thompson, right? Heard you're back on Iridia. Rick nodded, taking a sip of his drink. James Carter's here too, the bartender continued, his voice lowering. Works at Greenfield Colony. Surprise flickered in Rick's eyes at the mention of James. Decades had passed, but the bond forged in service remained strong. James? He echoed. Yeah, been here a while, the bartender replied, returning to his task. He's got a daughter in the mines. Tough break with what's happened at Rig 7. Rick's thoughts raced at the mention of Rig 7 and James's daughter. He pushed the implications aside for now. I'll pay him a visit, Rick mused, more to himself. Take care, warned the bartender with a knowing smile. Iridia Prime's bite goes beyond the wind. With those cryptic words lingering, Rick left his credits on the counter and rose from his stool. Action awaited, starting with unraveling the mystery of Rig 7. As he stepped back into the swirling dust, determination fueled his every stride. In the labyrinth of Iridia Prime's dusty streets, beneath skies painted in hues of deep orange and purple, Rick sought out James Carter's abode. It stood on the outskirts, a testament to resilience, fashioned from salvaged materials like much of the settlement. His knock on the door echoed with a rhythm that spoke of shared history. James greeted him, lines of worry etched on his face. Rick Thompson, James breathed, a glimmer of recognition softening his demeanor. Alive and well. Their embrace conveyed years of camaraderie and respect, a silent acknowledgement of their shared past. Inside, they settled at a simple table, the dim light casting long shadows. James poured a drink, its clarity reminiscent of crystalline waters. To the days gone by, Rick toasted. To the days gone by, James echoed. Their conversation traversed memories of battles and losses, blending laughter with moments of reflection. Yet, as the night deepened, their focus shifted to the present, the enigma surrounding Rig 7's explosion. Leaning in, James's voice held a note of conviction. There's more to this than meets the eye. I can sense it. Rick nodded, sensing the weight of truth in James's words. Then, with a solemn gaze, James revealed a personal connection. Alexis is my daughter. The revelation hung in the air, laden with significance. Rick absorbed the gravity of the situation, a quest for truth now intertwined with protecting a friend's family. Alexis is resilient, James continued, his voice tinged with concern. But this ordeal has shaken her. She suspects foul play. Rick leaned back, contemplating the new dimension of their mission. The pursuit of truth had evolved into a fight for justice, for the safety of Alexis, for the bond he shared with James, and for the enduring spirit that bound them together through the trials of time. Under the cloak of night, Rick departed from James's abode, the stars casting a faint glow upon the vast expanse above. The air cooled, a soothing balm after the day's oppressive heat. Pulling his jacket snug, he embarked toward the heart of the city, his footfalls stirring gentle clouds of dust with each stride. In the nocturnal realm, Iridia Prime revealed a different demeanor. Its streets whispered tales of introspection. Miners sought refuge in camaraderie or the solace of drink, their voices fading into the night. Rick's keen eyes scanned the darkness, ever vigilant for a clue overlooked amidst the aftermath of chaos. Rig 7 loomed like a gaping wound, its perimeter marked by a solemn yellow ribbon dancing in the wind. Workers, weary yet resolute, moved with purpose amidst the debris. Rick observed their efforts, pondering the labyrinth of possibilities that might have led to such calamity. Venturing further, he wandered past labyrinthine alleys and rows of humble abodes. Murmurs of speculation drifted from cracked windows and ajar doors, rumors of strife, conjecture about the explosion's origins, and whispers of the enigmatic city below. Near a dimly lit street lamp, a group gathered, their voices hushed yet laden with intensity. Rick lingered, his curiosity piqued. No accident, one miner murmured, his face illuminated by the lamp's flickering glow. Word is, there was a scuffle before the blast. Another voice joined the chorus, tinged with apprehension. That cursed city beneath us, we've delved too deep. A third scoffed, dismissing the notion. Superstition, it's the greed of corporations that's cursed us. Their discourse wove a tapestry of suspicion and intrigue, each thread a fragment of a larger puzzle. As Rick moved away, his gaze fell upon a glimmer beneath a nearby bench, a data chip, concealed beneath a veil of dust and neglect. Intrigued, he retrieved the artifact, its significance yet unknown. Pocketing the chip, Rick resumed his nocturnal odyssey through Iridia Prime's labyrinthine passages, a silent seeker amidst the shadows. Rick's hotel room stood as an oasis of calm amid the tumult of the desert outside. Its bare essentials, a bed, a desk, a chair, offered functionality over luxury, a fitting reflection of Rick's purpose-driven mindset. With a heavy thud, he dropped his duffel bag, the room absorbing the sound without complaint. The weight of the data chip in his pocket served as a tangible reminder of the intricate puzzle he sought to decipher. Placing it on the desk, Rick seated himself on the bed's edge, his fingers instinctively tracing patterns through his close-cropped hair. The day's events replayed in his mind, the murmurs in the pub, the concern etched in James's gaze, the haunting image of Rig 7's wreckage. A subtle click pierced the room's silence, alerting Rick to the intrusion. Years of training kicked in as he swiftly rolled off the bed, seeking refuge in the shadows. His senses heightened, he scanned the dimly lit space for signs of the assailant's presence. A figure emerged from the darkness, a silhouette against the faint glow seeping through the window. With lethal intent, the intruder lunged, a glint of moonlight reflecting off a blade. Rick evaded the attack, seizing a lamp from the bedside and wielding it as a makeshift weapon. Metal clashed, and shards of glass shattered upon impact. The assailant persisted, driven by unseen motives, but Rick remained steadfast. His movements were precise, honed by years of discipline and combat experience. With calculated strikes, he disarmed his adversary, rendering them incapacitated. Soon, the room was bathed in the pulsating hues of police sirens, their piercing wails piercing through the night's tranquility. Law enforcement officers flooded the room, their weapons drawn but lowered at the sight of Rick's unscathed form. With efficient professionalism, they secured the intruder and swiftly rendered aid. As the chaos subsided and the room fell silent once more, Rick's fatigue washed over him like a tidal wave. With a sense of relief, he secured the door and retreated to his bed, succumbing to the embrace of sleep amidst the enigma that was Iridia Prime. As the first light of dawn washed over the city, Rick Thompson navigated the bustling streets teeming with life. The market hummed with activity, merchants and buyers engaged in spirited exchanges over their wares, his keen eyes searching for more than just everyday items. At the edge of the market, tucked away in a nondescript tent, Rick found what he sought. The vigilant gaze of a guard greeted him as he entered, the flap falling shut behind him, muffling the noise of the market beyond. Inside, an arsenal awaited, weapons of varying calibers, ammunition crates neatly stacked, and protective gear promising safety in perilous times. Rick's hand found the familiar weight of a revolver, a silent reassurance in uncertain times. Wordlessly, he exchanged nods with the merchant as he selected a rifle, extra magazines, and a knife fit for the challenges ahead. With swift efficiency, the merchant tallied the items, and Rick parted with a stack of credits, his arms laden with tools of survival. Emerging back into the daylight, Rick's senses remained sharp, attuned to the subtle shifts in his surroundings. From the shadowed recesses of an alley, a cloaked figure materialized, a presence both elusive and distinct amidst the bustling crowd. Dr. Miriam Januto's urgent voice pierced the air from beneath her hood, delivering a cryptic message of warning. Rick's grip tightened around his newly acquired gear. "What do you mean?" he pressed, but Dr. Januto slipped away as swiftly as she had appeared, leaving behind only the echo of her urgent revelation. Alone in the throng of faces, Rick pondered the significance of her words. His instincts affirmed what he already suspected. Beneath the surface of Iridia Prime lay secrets that could ignite a conflict of unimaginable proportions. With resolve hardening in his heart, Rick prepared to face the challenges ahead, armed not only with weapons, but also with the knowledge that the city's fate hung in the balance. Rick's boots thudded against the worn floorboards as he entered the pub, the raucous din of miners' conversations washing over him. His eyes swept the room, cutting through the haze of smoke and dim lighting, searching for a face he had only recently come to know. There, at a corner table, Alexis sat with a drink, her posture radiating defiance even in rest. He approached, sliding into the seat across from her. She looked up, eyes narrowing with suspicion. "I know your father." Rick began without preamble, breaking the ice with the familiarity of shared connections. Alexis's expression shifted, a flicker of interest passing through her guarded demeanor. "James Carter? What's he got to do with any of this?" "He's worried about you," Rick said. "And after what happened at Rig 7, I can't say I blame him." She took a sip from her glass, her gaze not leaving Rick's. "That explosion wasn't an accident." She repeated her conviction like a mantra she'd said one too many times. "I believe you." His affirmation seemed to take her by surprise. "And I want to get to the bottom of it, with your help." Alexis leaned back, considering his words. Her eyes searched his face for any hint of deceit, but found none. "Why should I trust you?" she asked pointedly. "Because right now," Rick replied evenly, "I might be the only one who does believe you." The pub's noise seemed to fade into the background as they locked in their private standoff. Alexis broke away first, looking down at her drink before speaking again. "Fine," she conceded with a sigh that carried the weight of her worries. "We'll go to the mine, but if we're caught, we won't be." Rick's voice carried an assurance born from years in the field. Together they rose from their seats, making their way out of the pub and into the harsh light of day that did little to warm the chill that had settled over Iridia Prime since the explosion. The mine loomed in their future as they walked side by side toward Ground Zero. Chapter 8. A cloud of dust kicked up with each step. Alexis and Rick took, their boots crunching on the gravel-laden path toward Ground Zero. They walked shoulder to shoulder, an unspoken alliance forming with every meter they closed in on their destination. "You know, your father could outmaneuver anyone in his squad," Rick said, breaking the silence that had fallen between them. "We called him the Ghost, not just for how he moved, but because he had this uncanny way of disappearing right when you needed him most." Alexis let out a short, disbelieving laugh. "Sounds like him, always popping up where you least expect it." Rick smiled, encouraged by her response. "One time, we were pinned down, no way out, bullets flying the whole 9 yards. Then out of nowhere, James shows up behind the enemy lines and gives us the opening we needed." "Classic Dad," Alexis murmured with a mix of pride and nostalgia. As they continued to share tales of James Carter's exploits, the devastation wrought by the explosion came into view. The sight snatched their attention away from the past and thrust it squarely into the present. The remains of Rig 7 stood as a skeletal structure, hollowed out and still smoldering in places. Alexis pulled a compact device from her pocket, flipping it open to reveal a screen that buzzed to life at her touch. "We should check for any residual energy signatures," she suggested. "It might tell us something about what happened here." Rick nodded in agreement, drawing a small scanner from his own gear. "Good call, and keep an eye out for anything that looks off." Their steps became more cautious as they neared the wreckage, senses heightened for any clue that might reveal itself among the ruins. Alexis moved with purpose, her experience in the mines giving her an edge in navigating through the debris. They worked in tandem, Alexis scanning for anomalies while Rick examined structural damage and collected samples of twisted metal and ash-covered rocks. The sight spoke of chaos and confusion. Wires dangled from exposed panels like metallic vines, control stations lay in ruins, but amid the destruction, Rick's gaze was steady and calculating as he pieced together evidence with each fragment he collected. Their investigation was only just beginning as they moved deeper into Ground Zero's heart, their actions methodical and silent, save for the occasional murmur of coordination between them. The chain-link fence that once stood as an unyielding boundary around the perimeter of the explosion site lay twisted and torn, a testament to the force that had rocked Rig 7. Rick eyed the breach with a mixture of suspicion and resolve. "This is our way in," he murmured, ducking under a warped section of metal. Alexis followed close behind, her flashlight cutting through the dust that danced in the air. They stepped over rubble, their progress slow but deliberate as they breached the sealed-off parts of the mine. It was like stepping into the belly of some great beast. Its ribs comprised of support beams and cables. In an office high above Iridia Prime's surface, Cez's secure line chirped. He snatched up his communicator with practiced ease. The message was concise. Perimeter breach detected at Rig 7. His jaw tightened as he ended the call and stood up, his chair rolling back with a soft whir. "Team, we have a situation," he said, striding toward the door. His team fell into step behind him, each member alert and ready for action. They piled into their vehicle and sped toward the mine. Deep within its depths, Rick and Alexis continued their exploration. The beams from their flashlights bounced off jagged edges and shattered equipment as they sifted through the debris. Alexis paused, her light resting on a series of drilled holes, too uniform, too intentional. "Look at this," she called Rick over. These holes weren't made by any collapse. Rick knelt beside her, examining the pattern. "Controlled detonation points," he concluded. Their eyes met, a silent acknowledgement of what this meant. As they ventured deeper into the mine's shadowy passages, every step took them closer to where Dr. Genuto's team had discovered the ancient door. Each new clue seemed to underscore the possibility that this disaster was no accident. Outside, Cez arrived with his team at the mine entrance. They moved with precision, each member taking up a position as they prepared to enter. Their gear was state-of-the-art, designed for swift and silent operation, a stark contrast to the wreckage they were about to step into. Cez's hand signaled his team forward, his own flashlight piercing the darkness as they entered the threshold of Iridia Prime's wounded heart. As they delved deeper into the mine's labyrinthine tunnels, the air grew denser, heavy with the scent of earth and something else, an almost electric tang that prickled at their senses. Alexis led the way with a determined stride, her intimate knowledge of these passageways proving invaluable. Finally, they stood before it. The door. It loomed large against the backdrop of carved stone, its surface a tapestry of symbols that seemed to hum with a life of their own. Rick stepped forward, his hand hovering inches from the cool metal. He did not touch it, though every fiber in his being urged him to feel the engravings that swirled before his eyes. "Never thought I'd see something like this," Alexis whispered, her voice a mix of awe and apprehension. "Makes you wonder what's so important behind it." Rick nodded, eyes scanning the intricate designs. "Whatever it is, someone's willing to kill to keep it secret." Their conversation was hushed, a shared reverence for the discovery binding them in mutual respect. Alexis ran her fingers along the edge of the doorframe, her miner's instinct sensing more than just cold metal beneath her touch. "Look at this," she pointed to a section where dust had been recently disturbed. "Someone's been here. Recently." Rick's gaze followed her gesture, his mind piecing together the implications. "And if they're still here?" The sound was subtle, a mere shift in the ambient noise of the mine, but it was enough. Rick's head snapped up, his hand instinctively reaching for the concealed handgun at his side. "Get down," he hissed, eyes darting through the shadows. In one fluid motion, he pulled out another handgun from beneath his jacket and handed it to Alexis. Her grip was steady as she took it. Years in a mining colony had honed her reflexes. With practiced ease born from years in the military, Rick moved to cover behind a large piece of debris that had once been part of the mine's infrastructure. His back pressed against its cool surface, he signaled Alexis to take position on the opposite side. The quiet was almost deafening as they waited. The only sounds were their controlled breaths and the distant drip of water echoing through the tunnels. They were not alone. Rick could feel it as surely as he could feel the gun. A sudden burst of gunfire erupted, ricocheting off the stone walls with a terrifying cacophony. Sez and his men had commenced their assault, the sharp report of a sniper rifle cutting through the tension-laden air. They were shooting to kill. Rick responded with a burst from his handgun, the controlled shots finding their marks with lethal precision. One by one, a few members of Sez's team crumpled to the ground, their silent forms testament to Rick's deadly accuracy. Amidst the chaos, Alexis fired back, her stance steady despite the pandemonium around them. But fate was cruel. A bullet tore through the air and embedded itself in her shoulder. A sharp cry escaped her lips as she stumbled, pain flaring bright and hot. Rick's protective instincts surged. He unleashed a barrage of suppressive fire with his newly acquired weapons, carving a path through the relentless onslaught. "Come on," he shouted over the gunfire, grabbing Alexis by her uninjured arm. She gritted her teeth against the pain, adrenaline fueling her determination as they dashed towards escape. Bullets whined past them like deadly hornets as Sez's team intensified their attack. Just as they neared what seemed like safety, Sez materialized from the shadows directly in Rick's path. The two men locked eyes for a fraction of a second, long enough for recognition to spark. Rick acted on instinct, swinging his rifle in a wide arc. The stock connected with Sez's jaw with a resounding crack, sending him reeling backwards. Rick didn't pause to watch him fall. There was no time. With Alexis leaning heavily against him, Rick guided her through the maze of tunnels they had memorized on their way in. They emerged into the harsh light of Iridia Prime's suns, squinting as their eyes adjusted. There was their vehicle, a beacon of hope amidst the desolation. Rick helped Alexis into the passenger seat before jumping behind the wheel. The engine roared to life under his touch, and without hesitation, he slammed his foot down on the accelerator. Dust billowed behind them as they sped away from the mine, their escape cutting through the silence that had reclaimed the forsaken tunnels behind them. Understanding that they were isolated and without allies, Alexis and Rick made the critical choice to seek refuge within the farming section. They were confident that the outpost's isolation would offer a semblance of security and harbored hope that the community's inhabitants would extend their support. Upon nearing the agricultural haven, they observed Dr. Elizabeth Morgan, the esteemed leader of the agrarian enclave, meticulously nurturing her plants. Her gaze lifted upon their arrival, and a look of astonishment crossed her features. "Rick, Alexis, what brings you out here?" she inquired, her tone laced with worry. Rick relayed their harrowing tale, revealing the assault and their urgent plea for sanctuary. Dr. Morgan, cognizant of the peril they faced, did not hesitate to offer her assistance. James Carter was promptly notified of their unforeseen visit and hastened to the farmhouse to attend to Alexis's injury. With practiced precision, he cleansed and bandaged the wound, his touch conveying both expertise and empathy. Alexis grimaced through the discomfort, but felt a deep sense of gratitude for his aid. A group of the colony's farmers, recognizing the imminent threat to Alexis and Rick, armed themselves and strategically positioned around the domicile. Their resolve was unshakable as they stood watch, vigilant for any hint of encroaching peril. As the evening's darkness enveloped them, the farmers congregated within the farmhouse, keeping their armaments within reach. They hung on every word as Rick and Alexis unveiled their narrative, their faces etched with apprehension. "We can't remain here indefinitely," Rick stated, his voice hushed. "We must uncover a way to bring to light the true happenings at the mine." Alexis concurred with a nod. "However, we're incapable of achieving this independently. We beseech your support." Their request was met with solemn nods from the farmers, who understood the gravity of the situation. Despite recognizing the inherent dangers, they felt a moral imperative to act against the injustices befalling innocents. "We're with you," declared one of the farmers, his declaration resolute. "But a strategic plan is essential." The remainder of the night was spent in a fervor of planning, as Rick and Alexis brainstormed alongside their newfound allies. Caution was paramount, yet they were equally determined not to allow trepidation to impede their mission. With the first light of dawn casting a soft glow, the agriculturists rallied around Rick and Alexis, their weapons prepared for confrontation. Their resolve was as steadfast as the earth they tended. Under the low hum of the evening, Rick and James sat around a sturdy oak table with Dr. Elizabeth Morgan and a few other miners from the colony. The air was thick with tension, but the room offered a comforting solidarity. Elizabeth's eyes were sharp and alert, mirroring the seriousness of the situation. Rick cleared his throat, leaning forward, his hands clasped tightly in front of him. "We're dealing with more than just corporate greed," Rick began, his voice steady. "There's something beneath that mine that they're willing to kill for." James nodded in agreement, his brow furrowed with concern. "We've got to be smart about this. We can't just rush in there without a plan." Elizabeth chimed in, her voice resolute. "We have resources here, the land, the people. We need to leverage everything we've got." The miners murmured their agreement, their faces set with determination. "We need to dig deeper," Rick said. "Gather more evidence, map out the mine's structure, but we'll need to stay under the radar." James rubbed his chin thoughtfully. "The farmers here can maintain the defenses, keep watch, but we need someone on the inside, someone who knows the mines." At that moment, Alexis stepped into the room, her gait still slightly unsteady from her injury, but her eyes ablaze with resolve. "I know every inch of those mines," she declared, taking a seat at the table. "I can help navigate and pinpoint where they might be hiding more evidence." Nods of approval circled the table as Alexis laid out her knowledge of the tunnels and shafts beneath Iridia Prime's surface. Outside, farmers began their quiet work under the starlit sky, setting up surveillance points, reinforcing barricades, and discreetly patrolling the perimeter. Their movements were methodical and silent, a dance of shadows ensuring their sanctuary remained impenetrable. Rick stood up abruptly, pushing his chair back with a scrape that cut through the murmur of plans being laid out. "I still have something to do," he said with a grim determination in his eyes. "I'll be back as soon as possible." With that, he strode out of the room without looking back, leaving his companions to ponder his cryptic departure while they continued their planning without him. Chapter 9. Miriam Januto huddled in the dim light of the cave, her eyes scanning the treasure trove of data she had managed to gather from the ancient city. Her fingers danced across the surfaces of papers, tracing the outlines of symbols that teased her with their secrets. She pored over the maps and drawings, piecing together a history lost to time. The cave was her refuge, a place where she could delve into her research undisturbed. But the sense of sanctuary it offered was an illusion, one that was about to be shattered. From the shadows at the mouth of the cave, a figure emerged silently, a man clad in black military gear, his movements as quiet as death. In his hands, he held a gun, its barrel steady and aimed directly at Miriam. His presence was an omen of danger, yet Miriam remained unaware, engrossed in her work. The man's finger tightened on the trigger, his intent clear and lethal. A split second before he could unleash a bullet, a shot rang out. The man in black jerked once and crumpled to the ground, lifeless before he hit the cave floor. Rick Thompson stepped into view, gun still smoking in his hand. His eyes met Miriam's wide ones, relief and urgency swirling in their depths. "Dr. Januto," Rick said with a controlled intensity as he lowered his weapon, "you're not safe here." Miriam stared at the body on the ground, her mind racing to catch up with the sudden turn of events. Her sanctuary had been violated. Danger had found her, even in this hidden recess. "We need to leave now," Rick urged, his gaze sweeping over her scattered research. With effort, Miriam pulled herself together. She began to gather her files and maps hastily, but with care, not to leave anything behind that might fall into the wrong hands. Rick offered a hand to help her up. "I have a place we can go, a farm where you'll be protected." Miriam nodded, understanding that solitude was no longer an option. She took Rick's hand and allowed him to lead her out of the cave and into the unknown that awaited them beyond its confines. Rick's shadow loomed close as Miriam wove through the settlement, her purpose clear in every determined step. She found Mara and a few others huddled in the husk of a building, their faces etched with uncertainty. "We can't let them get away with this," Miriam insisted, her voice steady and convincing. "They've endangered our lives, exploited our discoveries for their own gain. We need to take a stand." Mara exchanged looks with the others, a silent conversation passing between them before nodding resolutely. "We're with you," she affirmed. Rick watched as the group, now numbering 8, armed themselves from hidden caches and battered lockers. Their eyes held the resolve of those who had seen too much to remain silent any longer. As they made their way back to the farm, the air thickened with tension, a quiet prelude to the storm that was brewing. James Carter's hand hovered over a seedling when the alarm cut through the serenity of Greenfield Colony. His head snapped up just as shots rang out across the fields. In an instant, farmers grabbed weapons hidden beneath haystacks and within weathered barns, their peaceful facade giving way to practiced readiness. Bullets whistled through the air as Cez's team advanced, methodical and relentless. Explosions erupted, shaking the ground beneath their feet and sending clouds of dirt into the sky. The farmers returned fire with grim determination. The scene descended into chaos as blasts illuminated their desperate struggle. Bodies fell while others scrambled for cover. Rick's group crested the hill just as another explosion rocked the battlefield. Miriam glanced at Rick, and without a word, they led their reinforcements in a wide flanking maneuver. The attackers, caught off guard by this new threat from behind, faltered. Rick's experience in combat shone through as he directed his team with precision. They moved like a single entity, picking off Cez's men one by one. Under this unexpected assault, Cez's team began to break ranks, their formation crumbling as panic took hold. The precision that had marked their advance now turned into a desperate scramble for survival. The attackers dispersed into the arid landscape of Iridia Prime, leaving behind the echo of gunfire and the acrid scent of spent explosives. In the aftermath, the once tranquil fields of Greenfield Colony lay scarred and trampled, the air heavy with the residue of conflict. The farmers and their newfound allies gathered among the damaged crops, their faces marked by fatigue and soot. They collected spent casings and salvaged what they could, their movements mechanical, driven by necessity rather than thought. James Carter stood at the center of a makeshift circle, his eyes sweeping over the faces before him. "We held them off this time," he began, his voice hoarse from shouting orders amidst gunfire. "But we know they'll come back, harder and with more firepower." Rick Thompson leaned against a charred tractor, his gaze hard but thoughtful. "We need a new plan, one that puts us steps ahead rather than reacting to their moves." Alexis Rivera stepped forward, her injury bandaged but her spirit unbroken. "The mine's still the key," she said. "Whatever's hidden down there is what they want. We secure it. We control the game." Miriam Januto nodded in agreement, her eyes alight with a strategic flame. "They expect us to lie low now, to lick our wounds." She paused, letting her words sink in. "We do the opposite. We go on the offensive." Murmurs of concurrence rippled through the group as they began to outline a strategy, a daring plan to strike at the heart of those who sought to exploit Iridia Prime. As dusk settled on Greenfield Colony, with its promise of cooler air and darker skies, an unfamiliar rumble approached from beyond the horizon. Heads turned, and hands instinctively reached for weapons as a convoy of rugged vehicles crested a nearby hill. The convoy's leading vehicle, a scarred and dust-weathered transport, screeched to a halt, kicking up a cloud of red dirt. From within emerged a figure, his very stance exuding an authority that demanded attention. He was clad in clothes that told tales of survival and defiance, each fray and stain a testament to confrontations with both man and nature. "I'm Ramirez Mohans," he announced, his voice slicing through the tension as he strode towards the group of cautious farmers. His tone was firm, underscored by a resonance that bespoke years of command, yet there was a note of understanding in his words, hinting at a shared hardship. "News has a way of spreading like wildfire here on Iridia Prime. Tales of your resistance against the plunderers of this world reached my ears. The farmers, a tapestry of skepticism and curiosity, cast wary looks among themselves as Ramirez confidently continued. The struggle against the insatiable appetite of the corporations is one my group knows well. We have amassed a stockpile of resources, gathered vital intelligence. We possess the means to strike decisively. It was James who, with the weight of the colony's future pressing upon his shoulders, stepped out from the ranks to bridge the gap between them, extending his hand in a tentative but resolute gesture of camaraderie. "We're in dire need of assistance," he conceded, his voice carrying the gravity of their plight. Their handshake was solid and deliberate, sealing an accord born of shared convictions. All around, the onlookers bore witness to the moment, a fleeting pause in the relentless march of time, as this nascent coalition sprouted from the ashes of conflict. Chapter 10. Rick paced in the dusty office of the farmhouse, the weight of recent events pressing heavily on his shoulders. He pulled out his communicator and punched in the code for Commander Stenson. The line buzzed twice before Stenson's gruff voice came through. "Thompson, what's the status?" Rick didn't waste time. "We held off an attack from Sez's men at Greenfield Colony, but it's clear they're after whatever's hidden beneath Rig 7. We've got injuries and damaged crops, but we're rallying." Stenson's silence was palpable through the device, then a heavy sigh followed. "Damn it, Rick. This is spiraling out of control." "I know, but we've got a coalition forming. Ramirez Mohans and his group just joined us. We need more than that, though. We need higher-level intervention." Stenson muttered something unintelligible under his breath before responding. "All right, I'll take this to Dr. Sinclair. Hang tight and stay alert." The line went dead before Rick could reply. At the GC Mining Corp headquarters, Commander Stenson stormed through the pristine corridors with a grim determination etched on his face. Reaching the CEO's office, he barged in without preamble. "Dr. Sinclair," he began, his voice low but charged with urgency. Dr. Marcus Sinclair looked up from his sleek desk, eyebrows raised in irritation at the intrusion. "This better be important, Stenson." "It is," Stenson replied, stepping forward and laying out the recent events in a rapid-fire summary. The explosion at Rig 7, the ancient city's discovery, and the escalating conflict at Greenfield Colony. Sinclair leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers as he absorbed the information. "And your point?" he asked coolly. "This isn't just about corporate interests anymore. Lives are at stake." Sinclair's eyes narrowed, his expression hardening into one of calculated indifference. "You're overstepping your bounds, Commander," he said icily. Before Stenson could respond, Sinclair pressed a button on his desk, summoning security. "You're making a mistake," Stenson growled as uniformed guards entered the room. In a flash, chaos erupted. Stenson resisted as they tried to subdue him. Fists flew and furniture toppled over in the confined space of the office. A desperate struggle ensued, a blur of movements punctuated by grunts of exertion and muffled cries. Then came a sickening thud as Stenson was thrown against a sharp corner of Sinclair's desk. He crumpled to the ground, blood pooling rapidly around him. Sinclair stood motionless, staring down at Stenson's lifeless body with cold detachment before finally addressing his guards with a dismissive wave of his hand. "Clean this up." Under the ruthless Iridian sun, the desert stretched infinitely, a vast expanse of desolation that was both stark and stunning. The silhouette of a single figure marred the endless horizon, casting a shadow upon the golden dunes. Nearing the scene, Rick and the farmers felt the grim reality descend upon them, oppressive as the heat itself. Commander Stenson's body lay motionless, a lifeless puppet discarded in the sand. His once impeccable uniform, synonymous with authority and discipline, was now tarnished by the desert's touch and the scars of a violent end. Rick's breathing hitched, the sight of his superior's lifeless form igniting a torrent of emotions within him. Disbelief vied with grief, and a blazing anger surged, threatening to consume all semblance of rational thought. The atrocity gnawed at him. This was an affront not only to an individual, but to the principles they all fought for. Damn them! The outcry from Rick shattered the oppressive stillness, his voice resonating with a fervor born of raw emotion. His hands balled into fists, the skin stretched taut over the bone, a physical manifestation of his inner turmoil. James moved closer, his hand on Rick's shoulder, a gesture of solidarity and comfort. "Rick," he whispered, the calm in his voice belying the gravity of the situation. His touch was a lifeline, pulling Rick back from the brink with the strength of their shared past. "We need to be strategic. We can't let Stenson's sacrifice be for nothing." Locking eyes with James, Rick found solace in the resolute look that greeted him. He exhaled slowly, quelling the searing rage at the realization that James's counsel was wise. They needed to maintain composure for the challenges ahead. The other farmers encircled them, resolve hardening on their weathered faces. They conversed in low murmurs that gained intensity, evolving into a chorus of tactical planning and defiance. "Target their supply chains," one proposed, his voice a whisper of rebellion. "Sever their lines of communication," another chimed in, the suggestion hanging in the air like a promise of disruption. Gradually, their whispers coalesced into a tangible scheme. They would become phantoms within the enemy's ranks, elusive and enigmatic, their presence felt only through the echoes of their subterfuge. Deep beneath the parched surface, in a place where the passage of time had ceased to hold sway, an impenetrable darkness had reigned. That is, until a singular, tenacious glimmer broke the monotonous black. An ancient display, its surface blanketed in the accumulated dust of ages, flickered reluctantly to life. Cryptic symbols scrolled across the screen, a forgotten script dancing a ballet of enigmatic sequences. And somewhere, in the hushed void of the underground, a piece of equipment emitted a series of electronic pulses. The sound was nearly lost to the stillness, yet it persisted, a solitary, resurrected pulse, signaling the stirrings of an epochal awakening.